everyone. Today I'm going to speak with all of us about sleep hygiene 101. Let's get started if I can get this to go. So, we're going to be referring to Emotion Regulation Handout 20B, the Sleep Hygiene Protocol, and I will be modifying pieces of this as we go through. There are three sections that this is divided into. First, what can we do to increase the likelihood of restfulness or sleep? I think about sleep as surfing almost. Like we can do everything that we can to prepare ourselves to catch the wave, but we can't necessarily will the wave to come. So these strategies revolve around how to prepare ourselves to catch that wave and ride into sleep. The second piece is about what we can do if we're calm but wide awake. And that is often accompanied by some anxious rumination or getting really frustrated or PO'd about the fact that we might be awake. And there are some fail safes at the bottom here that can be helpful too. So let's just go ahead and get rolling. I'm going to ask you to ask yourselves how your sleep has been most affected by this time. What I mean by that is we're in the middle of a global pandemic. There's a tremendous amount going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in each of our personal lives. As new mothers or as pregnant women, there can be a lot that we are dealing with, and it's the Wild West at times. So whether that's pregnancy, the postpartum period, the current global health situation, or social justice, I invite you to think about how your sleep has been impacted during the most recent circumstances in your life. One piece that I like to drive home is that healthy sleep is vital for your physical health. And so sleep, your nighttime, is a direct reflection of your daytime. And the sleep that we get can be dose response in helping us to live our best daytime lives and really contributes to optimal levels of physical functioning and physical health. Poor sleep has been linked to outcomes as disparate as hypertension and diabetes. In large scale studies where we ask people a single item on how much sleep they're getting per night. And then when we actually place people in a laboratory-based setting, we see that there are differences as a function of depriving people hour by hour sleep in our immune functioning, in our cellular functioning, in our inflammation markers, and that can be recouped as we add sleep back. This is just to say that we have sleep stages, right? That stage 1 is our lightest. That stage 2 is where our heart rate starts to slow and body temperature drops. Stage 3 and 4, which are now consolidated into single stage, is that slow wave, deep sleep, where we get the most restorative pieces of sleep that happen to kind of regenerate cellular growth and help us. It's where muscle repair and muscle and tissue repair both happen. And then lastly, there's REM, which is our dreaming state. And it really is characterized by like not being able to move. Sometimes you might have had a time where you like woke up out of a deep sleep and it's hard to move. That is actually quite normal depending on when we wake in sleep. This piece is just to show that we have two sleep drives. One is called our circadian drive, the bottom piece, and the top is called our homeostatic sleep drive. So as we go throughout our day, we build sleep pressure in the way that a rubber band stretches. And as we continue to build sleep pressure throughout a day, we hopefully sling ourselves into sleep just like a slingshot that night. When we take a nap, that band contracts and comes in. And so we generally recommend against long daytime naps so that we're not pulling and pushing that band in a way that leaves our body not knowing what's going on. The circadian piece is just to say that our bodies are designed to sleep at night and that we're also responsive to entrainment cues from the environment, namely light. Light is super helpful, and the absence of light is what helps promote melatonin, which each of us produce in our brain. I call it the hormone of darkness, or Darth Vader of hormones. And that usually comes up or starts to peak about 2 hours before bedtime. So when we're on our screens, we're actually inhibiting melatonin production. We'll talk a tiny bit more about that as we move forward. The piece that I want to highlight here is that there are different sleep duration recommendations for each age group. So your baby might be sleeping closer to 14 or anywhere between 14 and 17 hours. And at the tops and bottoms of these teal pieces, we can see that a little bit longer or a little bit shorter sleep duration is still within bounds of what people sleep. As an adult, we're generally sleeping between 7 and 9 hours, and that recommendation is based on what we see as optimal daytime functioning the next day. So that 7 to 9 hours comes from the cognitive functioning that we see people have, from the mood functioning or ability to emotionally regulate, and from motor-based functioning. And the only real way we know how much sleep each one of us needs is by the daytime consequences of not getting enough of it. And so it may very well be that you are a 9 hour sleeper and that's what's normal for you. It's okay to have some variability in that. And we look to our daytime to see. Among those three domains of mood, motor, and cognition or thinking capabilities, one domain is affected most robustly by sleep deprivation across all age groups, and that's mood. So sleep actually does help with emotion regulation, and the please skills are exactly where they need to be embedded within our DBT framework. This is just to say that sleep problems can lead to stress, and stress leads to physiologic levels of arousal. We can feel our heart rate, or our blood, we'll feel our heart rate rise, and our blood pressure can also rise. We're just feeling agitated even during the day, and especially when we're in our bed at night and not catching sleep, which then further leads to more sleep problems and more stress and so on. So this can be a vicious cycle. What are some recommendations for optimal sleep? The most important thing that is listed in the top part of your handout is to keep a consistent sleep schedule. Getting up at the same time every day, even on weekends or during vacations, can help to regulate sleep, especially when it feels off. That can be hard to do. And part of what we describe as social jet lag is when we see that we are sleeping in on the weekends for a couple more hours or trying to catch sleep where we can. And when we're in this 24/7 grind culture, or when we have a new baby to take care of, or even as we're approaching birth during pregnancy, it can become harder to sleep. One of the most fail-safe ways to regulate sleep is to regulate routine. And that starts with regulating a regular wake time. If we could regulate our sleep time or fall asleep, and we could snap our fingers and fall asleep, then insomnia wouldn't be a thing. We can, however, regulate our wake time. And that is, I think, the single most important piece of trying to establish a sleep routine. So while it's okay to sleep in, if you are having sleep problems like falling asleep or staying asleep, establishing a regular wake time and maintaining that through the weekends within about 45 minutes to an hour will be really helpful in helping to routinize your sleep. This piece is to speak to the value of light during the daytime. It can be hard to get outside, and certainly the global pandemic has made it harder to interact maybe in the same ways that we would. And getting outside and taking a quick walk has the benefit of increasing physical activity and also helping with light exposure, which then also helps with our nighttime. Sometimes people use light boxes, you might have heard of those, and what they do is many of them act as dawn simulators. And that's because this piece of light, even in the mornings, can be very helpful in awakening us and telling our bodies and brains that it's time to get up and at 'em. It also has mood regulatory effects, where exposure to light during the day can help increase positive affect and decrease negative affect through various brain-based and circadian mechanisms. This other piece I think is pretty critical. We want to make our bedrooms quiet and relaxing. Yeah, we want to keep the room at a comfortable, cool temperature. Some literature suggests that most people sleep well at around 72 degrees, and there are some individual differences in that. We all have our own preferences. I think about making one's bedroom like a Zen spa, facial like place, some place to which you would want to retreat. So, electronics in the bedroom or a television in the bedroom can be our largest impediments to sleep. All of those things are designed to keep us up. We could be watching a really stimulating or emotionally engrossing net. How many times have we Netflixed in order to get to sleep? Even Netflix has been designed to promote wakefulness because the inter-episode interval has decreased over time to about a second, where it used to be longer. So both the light and the stimulation there can keep us up. And on the other hand, making our bedroom a calming environment that's inviting and lower on the stimulus level can be super helpful. This piece of not going to bed unless you're sleepy is also critical. Why is that important, and what does it mean to be sleepy? I would argue that a lot of us feel tired throughout the day. We can even feel fatigued, where we feel that physical malaise almost, like we're walking through molasses on days that are super hard, or like everything is slowed down and we just feel run down. The difference between that and feeling sleepy is I think of one of the seven dwarfs, Sleepy, I believe his name is, who's like nodding off. Think about if you've ever fallen asleep in a class, that feeling of like, oh, my chin is about to drop. That's what we mean by sleepy. And that's when you're supposed to get in bed. When we get into bed, when we're just tired, and then we're in bed for long periods of time, it also works against restful sleep because we're not actually physically drowsy enough to get to sleep. And again, this becomes more important as we have sleep problems. If you don't have any trouble getting into sleep, then it's probably less important for you to pay attention to how drowsy you're feeling. But sleepy here means drowsy. We say to turn off electronic devices at least 30 minutes before bedtime. If you were seeing me, I would say at least an hour, because that light exposure from a screen, even if you're on night shift, even if you're wearing blue light glasses, which I do recommend wearing 2 hours before bedtime if you can, it's still activating a part of your brain and suppressing melatonin production to keep you awake. So that screen in our faces, our go-to of like scrolling through Insta or getting on social media or even reading the news, not only has the power to be emotionally stimulating in some way or interesting, but also directly turn down the melatonin that's being produced that's trying to get us to sleep. So no electronics, I'm going to say an hour before bedtime. 5 drinks to avoid before bed. Alcohol independently disrupts the sleep cycle. So while it might help getting to sleep, it's not going to help you stay asleep. It interrupts that slow wave sleep. And so around 2 and then again at 4 a.m., you could be awakening because it is interrupting the sleep cycle independently. And we can't fight that alcohol piece. We just need to not consume it within a few hours of bedtime. Another is coffee. I generally say no coffee after 12 noon if you're having any sleep concerns, and the hard cutoff is 2 p.m. because the half-life of caffeine is actually 12 hours. I include in that sweet tea that we sometimes forget has caffeine. Soda certainly has caffeine, energy drinks the same. So all three of those plus tea can really keep us up, and its effects, even if we don't feel it because we're so fatigued or tired, really do keep our brain and body up at a level that don't promote sleep. And so the converse, by stopping at 12 noon, we're giving our body an extra leg up in helping to ride that wave into sleep. Water, especially as we approach birth, uh, can increase the frequency of nighttime needing to pee or nocturnal urination. And so if you find that you are getting up to pee, avoiding water within an hour and a half of bedtime and using the restroom immediately before bed can be helpful. So I really love this cartoon or drawing here from the New Yorker, I believe. It reads, you can't sleep? Have you tried meditating, then reading for an hour, then going to the couch, then back to bed, then counting backward from 10 million, then taking a sleeping pill? There's a place for using sleep aids, and I encourage you to speak with your physician about that. There are many over-the-counter sleep aids that we sometimes use as we're traveling, or if we really need to get sleep and we know that we have an acute stressor in our life. There's a place for that. And we all know that there are a gazillion apps that help. I have a favorite called the Calm app, and Headspace is another one. But the Calm app has very specific sleep stories that are designed for adults that are just stimulating enough, but not too engrossing to help promote sleep. And they're perfectly timed to give us that window of about 20 to 28 or 30 minutes that'll help us get to sleep. And the key there is, if you're going to use it at nighttime for guided meditation or for a sleep story, that you're keeping it face down away from you and that you're not checking the time or using it when you wake up. Your alarm will go off even if you're using your phone as an alarm. I would think back to any time that it's failed you. And if it hasn't, then just to remember that there's no need to double check that and that it'll be there for you. This experience, though, is exceptionally common, especially to anyone that has ever experienced any type of insomnia, whether that is stress reactive, whether that is long-standing concerns, whether it's related to pregnancy as it becomes more physically uncomfortable to sleep because you have this pressure on your bladder and a baby kicking, or in the postpartum as a baby is crying and you're feeding it in the middle of the night. So it's just to say that it's a human experience. So one thing that I'm going to encourage you to do on your own is to check out some of these apps. Headspace.com has a few body scans that can be helpful to use during the day and during the night. Some of the breathing skills that we've learned in the distress tolerance modules are exceptionally helpful upon waking. It is very difficult to clear our minds, and I think it's very important to remember that nocturnal awakenings are super normal. I'm going to ask you how many times you think the average adult or kiddo wakes up during the night. Jot it down or think of the number in your head. The answer is actually a couple dozen times. Every adult wakes between 12 and 24 times a night. And so it's really normal to wake up. It's just that some of us at different times in our life can be more sensitized to when we wake up, it's more difficult to get back to sleep. Or we might be dreaming so vividly, or just be at a higher level of arousal so that our sleep feels lighter. And in fact, we might indeed be sleeping. Or when we wake up, it feels frustrating that we're awake. So engaging in some of the paced breathing that you use during the day is exceptionally helpful at the night. And I say that any skill that we're going to try and leverage at the nighttime, we should be practicing during the day. So these check-ins and body scans can be really helpful because you will always have your body with you as you're asleep and at any time to check in and see, how are my hands feeling? Can I wiggle my toes? What does the comforter feel like on me? There are some thoughts that are passing me by. I'm awake right now, and that's normal. That's been the single most helpful thing that I've said to myself, that, hey, it's normal to wake up, and I will go back to sleep, and I'm just going to pace my breathing to help lower my heart rate and get there. Other pieces that we talked about in the overarching please skills are exercising regularly and maintaining a healthy diet. Those pieces are easier said than done at times, and sometimes when stress arises, all three of these things go out the window. And it's just to say that these are actually sleep tips as well, that exercise promotes more restful sleep. It decreases the amount of time that we take to get to sleep, and it increases the continuity of sleep, or it changes and makes our sleep more continuous over the night. And with a healthy diet, we're less likely to suffer from heartburn at nighttime, to feel full or bloated, and also a healthy diet in general can help regulate our entire circadian rhythm in a way that helps promote sleep. So the American Academy of Sleep Medicine their president has this statement that I really like. She says that sleep is one of the three pillars of a healthy lifestyle, along with good nutrition, like we just said, and regular exercise. Getting quality sleep can improve physical and mental health, overall performance, and mitigate safety risks. The piece here that stands out to me is that our sleep actually helps reduce any risk that we would have of getting into car accidents. Sleep deprivation is the single largest cause of any car accident in the US and abroad, actually. And there are times at which we might discount those risks, but being kind of mindful about how much sleep we've gotten the night before and getting behind a motor vehicle or engaging in physically demanding tasks, or if one's work involves those pieces, like, you know how on medications it can say be careful of operating heavy machinery. Under sleep deprivation, those same safety warnings apply, and 18 hours of sustained wakefulness, actually upwards of 14 for most people, can be equivalent to having a blood alcohol level that is at the level of legal intoxication. So it does impair a variety of domains, safety not being the least of that. And on the flip side, the positive is that getting regular sleep can independently help our mood immeasurably. It helps, again, increase positive mood and decrease negative mood. And when we don't get enough, even after a single night of partial sleep deprivation, we walking around as free range humans in the environment can see neutral stuff, and our brain automatically goes to the negative. We'll take a neutral event, an interaction with a friend, and appraise that as something that's negative. So sleep can help buffer against daytime mood in a very meaningful way. So we have gone through a lot of the recommendations. Overall, the main modifications that I would make to this are I would not read an emotionally engrossing novel, actually. I would read something that's super boring, like a National Geographic, one of your kiddos' textbooks, one of your own textbooks. A go-to for me is a chemistry text or something that I have laying around. Not to go to the news, because these novels can either activate us or sometimes remind us of other emotionally charged events in our own life, um, or just keep us up. The other piece is to, if you are in bed for what feels like is more than 15 minutes, I would say not a half hour. Here they say if you're in bed for about a half hour at number 5. I would say 15 minutes or so. And because you're not clock watching, right? Because you don't have your iPhone and you're not going to look at the time, especially if you have any sleep concerns, you just do what feels like 15 minutes. If you haven't fallen asleep by that time, you go to a chair in your room or sit on the floor or get anywhere else outside of your bed in dim lighting and read something that's non-stimulating, or put on one of those meditations. And you can put one of those on in bed if you wish, but the recommendation is always to get out of bed if you have any problems with sleep maintenance. And that is because, sorry about that. That is because our brains are really powerful organs, and I'll speak with us about this a bit more, but we make an association between our bed not being a restful place when we're not sleeping in it. So we say that the bed is used for two things: sleep and intercourse or sex. That's it. Not for chilling, not for watching Netflix, not for eating, not for watching television. In an ideal world, the only thing that we would be doing in bed is sleeping. So the question that I'll leave you with is, based on what you've learned and what you know about yourself, your life circumstances, you are the expert on your daytime and nighttime. What is one step you'd like to take towards sleep health? And we can start with this question when we meet together. It's also just a good thing to think about in general. So with that, I will leave us. And thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have any other questions, we are here to help. Let's see.